I'd like to welcome you back to Easy Learning 77, your complete Algebra 1 Semester 1 online course. So here are some rules that your teacher may implement for this course. Number 1, you must have a separate notebook for this class, preferably a 3-ring binder so you can add sheets and take sheets out. Number 2, you must take notes for each lesson and keep all the notes in your notebook. Number 3, taking notes and having them all together is part of your grade. 4, your teacher might allow you or might not to use your notes during quizzes and exams. Number 5, anytime you need to, pause or rewind the video to review whatever you may have seen. We're going to start with Algebra 1 vocabulary, which we will use throughout the school year. First term that we're going to learn is constant. The second one is variable. The third one is coefficient. The fourth one is algebraic term. And the last one is algebraic expression. So we're going to look at examples and definitions for each one of these words. Okay, so here's our first vocabulary term, constant. And a constant is just a numerical value that never changes. So let's look at some examples of these. Like just regular numbers that we're used to, like 1, -8, 12.1, -54.7, 0. These are just regular numbers, and we're used to working with these. These are constant. Their value never changes. So here's an example. The value 1 never changes. And you already have some constant of what 1 means. For example, if we look at this picture and I was to ask you, how many cows do you see in this picture? Well, you'd answer 1. In this picture, if I was to ask you, how many people do you see? You'd say, well, there's 1 person. On this picture, if I was to ask you, how many roses do you see? You'd say, well, I see 1 rose. And so even though the pictures are very different, that concept of 1 never changes. In addition to constants, we have special constants. Like here we have a special constant named pi. You may have seen this already in your courses. So pi is spelled Pi, that's its name. We also use this Greek letter, which is the Greek letter pi. And so pi always has the same value, 3.14159. Now these dots here at the end, that dot, 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 that means that this number never ends. It goes on forever and ever and ever. So it's kind of a strange number. It goes on forever and ever, but its value never changes. Pi always has the exact same number, the exact same value, so it is a constant. Here's another special constant, E. Now you probably won't see E until around Algebra 2, but it's kind of like pi in that it has a value, 2.718. Those 3 dots again mean it goes on forever and ever and ever. So 2.718, that value never changes, and so it's a constant, but it also never ends. Here is our second vocabulary term, variable. And so the definition of a variable is a letter or symbol used to represent a value that can change. So remember, constants never change, like 1 is always just 1. But variables can change. Let's look at an example. Let's say that we're taking the temperature of our city at different times during the day. So maybe at 10 a.m., the temperature is 50 degrees. And then it changes, the temperature changes to 62 degrees at 1 p.m. And then it changes again because at 5 p.m. it's 71 degrees. So here's the point. That temperature is changing throughout the day, and so we'll represent it with a variable t. The variable t changes as the day progresses. Here's our third vocabulary term, coefficient. That's pronounced coefficient. And a coefficient is just a constant in front of a variable. So remember, a constant is a number and a variable is a letter. So let's look at this example right here. I've got this short term here called 7x. So the number in front of the variable, 7 is the number or the constant, and x is the variable. So 7 is the coefficient here. It's the constant that's in front of the variable. So remember, 7 is a constant, but in this case, it's also a coefficient. And x is our variable. Remember, just like our example, t is the variable because the temperature would change. So here, x is our variable. That number we put into x can change. Let's look at another example. Here I've got the short expression 7h minus 10r. And so when I look at 7h, what do you think the coefficient is? Well, it's a number in front. So 7 is my coefficient. It's also a constant because 7 never changes. H is a letter that represents maybe the hours. And so H is our variable in that first term. Here's my second term, minus 10r. So when I look at minus 10r, I've got a coefficient and a variable. Can you figure out what the coefficient is? Right, it's negative 10 because it's the constant in front of the variable. So negative 10 is a coefficient and it's also a constant. Finally, r is going to be the variable because it's the letter, and that value for r can change. Okay, here's our next vocabulary term, term. So in algebra, a term can be several things. Number one, it can be a single constant like 12, or it can be a single variable like t, or it can be constants and variables multiplied together. And when I have a big complex expression, terms are separated by pluses or minus signs. Okay, now this is going to start getting a little bit complicated, but remember, you can always rewind the video. You can always pause it anytime you need to copy your notes down. These definitions should be going into your notebook. Remember, part of your grade is taking notes. So pause it whenever you need to, rewind it whenever you need to. So let's look at an example here. I've got a full mathematical expression here, 12 plus y plus 8x minus xy. So the first thing I might ask you is how many terms are there in this expression? Well, let's look at that fourth part of the definition. It says that terms are separated by plus or minus signs. So notice I have two plus signs here and I've got a minus sign here. So that means I have four terms. I've got 12 as a term, I've got y as a term, I've got 8x as a term, and then negative xy is my fourth term. Okay, those pluses and minuses separate my four terms. So let's see what term one, let's classify it. So here's term one, and it's just, is that a variable or is that a constant? What do you think? Okay, it's just a single constant. Okay, so let's look at this second term here, y. So let's classify what is y. Is it a constant or is it a variable? Well, it's just a variable all by itself. Okay, term number 3 is 8x. So notice this time I have a constant which is 8 and I have a variable which is x. So what I have is I've got constants which is 8 and variables which is x, and they're being multiplied together. So 8x means 8 times x. Notice that 8 is a constant, but it's also a coefficient because coefficients are the constant in front of a variable. That 8 is a constant, the x is a variable, therefore 8 is a coefficient. Okay, let's look at our fourth term, and this is negative xy. And in this case, I've got two variables, x and y, and they're being multiplied together because xy means x times y. So my classification for my fourth term is that they're variables multiplied together. Here's our fourth vocabulary term, algebraic expression. So an algebraic expression is one or more mathematical terms linked by plus and minus signs. So in our last example, that big long expression 12 plus y plus 8x minus xy, that's one big algebraic expression. And remember, we said it had 4 terms. There's 12, there's y, there's 8x, and there's negative xy. 4 different terms. And they're all linked by pluses and minuses. But the whole thing together is one big algebraic expression. So here's another example of an algebraic expression. 2x plus 9 plus 82 minus ab. So this is one big algebraic expression, but it has a bunch of little subparts. So first thing I could ask you is, how many terms are there in this algebraic expression? Remember, they're all linked by pluses and minuses, so 2x is my first term, 9 is my second one, plus 82 is my third one, and negative ab is my fourth term. So let's classify term 1. The first one, here it is, 2x. So what do you think that is? It's got a constant, it's got a variable. Remember, 2x means 2 times x, so that's constants and variables multiplied together. Okay, here's my second term. My second term is a 9. So what is that? Is it a variable? No, it's a constant. And it's all by itself. There's no variable here, so this is just a single constant. Term 3, what is that? Variable with a constant. Right, it's just a single constant, just a number all by itself. And finally, our fourth term is over here, negative ab. And so a and b are both variables. ab means a times b. And so we classify it as 2 variables being multiplied together. Let's look at an example that puts everything together. Remember, an algebraic expression is one or more mathematical terms linked by plus and minus signs. So here I have a long algebraic expression. I've got 12xy minus 5y minus 18 plus xy minus 52x. So I could ask you, how many terms are there in this algebraic expression? Well, notice I've got a minus, I've got a minus, I've got a plus, and I've got a minus. So all my terms are separated by these pluses and minuses. So here's my first term. It's 12xy. And I've got a minus sign, so there's my second term, negative 5y. And I've got a minus sign, so my third term is negative 18. Then I have plus xy, so that is my fourth term. And then finally I've got minus 52x, which is my fifth term. So I've got 5 terms in this big long algebraic expression. There's 5 of them. Let's classify the first one. So 12xy. What is 12? Constant or variable? 12 is a constant. X, what is x? It's a variable. And y is also a variable. So I have one big long term, which is 12xy, and so I have constants and variables being multiplied together. 12xy means 12 times x times y. So let's classify the second term. I've got negative 5y. So negative 5 is a constant, and y is, what is y? It's a variable. And so negative 5y really means negative 5 times y. So I classify that also as constants and variables multiplied together. So here's my third term. We're going to classify it. I've got negative 18. And so negative 18 is it a variable? Right. It's actually a constant. So negative 18, we'll classify that as a single constant. And now I've got xy. X and y, all I have there are variables x and variable y. xy means x times y. And so we would classify that as 2 variables being multiplied together. Okay, finally, negative 52x. Negative 52 is a constant. It never changes. X is a variable. It always changes. And so I've got negative 52 times x. I have a constant and a variable being multiplied together. Okay, let's just do a little slight review. What is negative 18? How would you classify that? It's a single constant, but what else is it? Okay, so finally, what if I gave you a term like y? What is that? Y is just a variable. Okay, it's time to practice what we've learned. So you're going to work with your shoulder partner. So here's what you and your shoulder partner might look like. If your partner's asleep, tell them, "Psst, wake up." Okay, so whether your teacher has you work with a shoulder partner or if she has you work individually, each student must turn in their own work. You can rewind and pause the video whenever you need a review. You can work the problems on a sheet of paper, and you can turn them in when you are done. So don't forget to put your name on your work before you turn it in. Okay, you have 4 classwork problems that you're going to work on. And remember, you can pause this video so you can copy these problems down. If you need to go back and rewind and pause to look at examples or definitions, you can do that. But you have to write these problems down on paper. So go ahead and pause the video, copy everything down, and good luck to you. All right, looks like you made it to the first lesson. Thank you for all your attention, hard work, and your cooperation. So here's what your crew may look like, and you can take a selfie now that you're done and change your status to done with this lesson. So on behalf of everyone at tinyurl.com/easylearning77, I'd like to thank you.